şerifi getirenlerine ahir ve akıbetleri hayır ola. Âl-i ezvacı, Tavret evladı Resulü Sallallahu Efendilerimizin sayır enbiya-i zem ve Resulü fiyan hazrat-ı ervah şeriflerine birimiz bir Allah Habeş radıyallahu anh Efendimizin alel husus bu caminin banisi ve bugüne kadar içerisinden gelmiş geçmiş imam müezzin kayımlarının ve kahve ehli ivan ervah için Allah rızası için El Fatiha. Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. İnnallâhe ve melâiketehu yusallûne alennebi. Ya eyyühellezîne amenû sallu aleyhi ve sellimû teslîmâ. Allahümme salli ala seyyidina Muhammedin ve ala ali seyyidina Muhammed. Allahu Ekber, Allahu Ekber. Allahu Ekber, Allahu Ekber. Eşhedü en la ilahe illallah. Eşhedü en la ilahe illallah. Eşhedü enne Muhammeden Resulullah. Eşhedü enne Muhammeden Resulullah. Hayya ale's-salâh. Hayya ale's-salâh. Hayya alel-felâh. Hayya alel-felâh. Allahu Ekber, Allahu Ekber. La ilahe illallah.
Elhamdülillah, elhamdülillah. Elhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin. Ve salatu ve selamu ala Resulina Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ecmain. Nahmadullah Teala ve nestağfiru ve eşhedü en la ilahe illallah vahdehu la şerike lah. Ve neşhedü enne seyyidina Muhammeden abduhu ve habibuhu ve resuluhu. Sallallahu aleyhi ve ala alihi ve ezvacihi ve ashabihi tabi'i hulafâ raşidil mahdin. Min ba'di. Ve zellemati ala tahkik. Ve hususen minhu alamati hulafâ rasulü ala tahkik. Umaral Mu'minin, Hazreti Abdulkerim, Umar, Osman ve Ali, ve ala bakir sahabe tabi'in, ridvanullahi teala aleyhim ecmain. Ya eyyuhal mu'minullah hazirun, ittakullahi teala, ve tehu innemellezine tekavellezine hum muhsinun. Elhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin, ve salatu ve selamu ala eşrafil enbiya ve mursalin, Seyyidina ve Mevlana Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ecmain. All praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the heavens and the earth. All praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He who is the first, the last, the manifest, the hidden, He who has power and might over everything. And may all peace and blessings be upon the most honored one in divine presence, the chosen messenger, the Imam of the prophets, the pride of creation, the beloved of Allah, Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. And upon his noble family and his blessed companions, especially upon the rightly guided Khalifahs, Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq, Hazrat Umar Farooq, Hazrat Usman al-Ghani, and Hazrat Ali al-Murtaza, and all those who follow them until the last day. O believers, have taqwa of Allah, have fear of Allah, be aware of Allah. For over 1400 years, from this khutbah place, from this mimbar, the Imams are saying while standing in this holy maqam of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, Ittaqullah, have fear of Allah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding us in the Holy Quran, in Surah Al-Ali Imran saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, O you who believe, fear Allah as He should be feared, and die not except in a state of Islam. And do not die except in a state of Islam. And Holy Prophet ﷺ said in his Hadith Sharif, fear Allah wherever you are. And the great Sahaba Hazrati Abdullah ibn Mas'ud saying in explanation of this Hadith, that fear of Allah means that He is to be obeyed, not disobeyed, remembered, not forgotten, and shown gratitude, not ingratitude. And for 1400 years, until this last 21st century, the Muslims were having the fear of Allah. They were running to please Allah. And they were looking only to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the pleasure of Holy Prophet ﷺ, to the pleasure of the awliya Allah. Until this last 21st century, the Muslims were having the fear of Allah because Islam was ruling. Because Islam was ruling under the shadow of Allah, the Khalifatullah. And the Muslims were fearing breaking the laws of Allah, because the laws of Allah, they were protected by the shadow of Allah on earth, the Khalifahs. And once the Khalifah was removed, this fear of Allah is also removed. And this fear of breaking His law is also removed. As long as the Muslims kept the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alive in their hearts, they had honor. Because as long as a man has fear of Allah, as long as a man has love of Allah in his heart so much that he is afraid of being disobedient, then that man will be running for the pleasure of his Lord. And he will not be looking to please this dunya. He will not be looking to follow his ego. He will not be running to become a slave of shaitan. No. He will only care about being a servant of Allah. And the true servants of Allah, they are the lions of Allah. And for 1400 years, this religion has been the religion of the lions of Allah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who are brave. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who have courage. As Holy Prophet ﷺ said in Hadith Sharif, there are two characteristics Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves: generosity and bravery. There are two characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates: miserliness and indecency. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who are brave. In another hadith, Holy Prophet ﷺ said, the strong believer is better and more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the weak believer. Although in both there is good. So, O nominees of being believers, or those who are calling ourselves believers, ask yourselves, we must ask ourselves, do we want to be strong believers or weak believers? In our dunya, we're always running. In the dunya, we are always running to be the best. We are running to have the best education. We are running to have the best job, the best house, the best clothes, the best in everything. But in the 21st century, Muslims are doing the barest minimum for their religion. When it comes to Islam, they are not running to become the best. They are running to become the weakest. And they are mocking and making fun and oppressing those who are strong in their religion. The believer should run to be the best believer in the sight of Allah. We should be running to be strong believers, the brave believers that are beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And alhamdulillah, we are following one of the strongest and bravest lions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ever created. Sahibul Saif, Shaykh Abdulkerim Kibrisi Rabbani. The one that we have not met anyone more generous than him. As his name given by Sultan al-Awliya is testifying to this. And the one that we have not met anyone who is braver than him. The one, when he was hardly 19 years old, he was already fighting for the sake of Allah, fighting for the sake of Islam. Physically. Giving up everything. Giving up his life for the sake of Allah. And the one, when barely a few years after becoming a Ghazi, fighting for Allah and fighting for Islam, he was sent to the West, where Islam was not known, where spirituality was not known, real Islam and real spirituality. And he gave up from everything and fighting in the name of Allah, the spiritual war, to transform all those that he have met, for them to leave their ego and shaitan and dunya and their desires, to fight the greatest struggle and to come to the presence of Allah. He is like this, and he is showing us the way, because he has the example of the most brave one, the most courageous one, and the strongest one, the most noble one, and the most honorable one, the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Hazrat Ali Karramallahu Wajhah said, when the battle grew fierce between the two sides, we used to seek safety with the Holy Prophet and look to him for bravery, because he was always the closest to the enemy. And Imam al-Busri, Qaddasallahu Sir, the author of the Qasidat al-Burda, described the Holy Prophet ﷺ saying, the hearts of his enemies were struck with terror at the news of his arrival, just as a heedless goat that has strayed from the herd becomes scared to a sudden alarm. And the true followers of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba Kiram, the Awliya Allah, they are carrying these characteristics. Imam al-Busri is saying, and the person who has the help of Rasulullah ﷺ with him, even if a lion meets him in its den, it begins to fear. Look at the picture of our Shaykh when he was arrested, because he was representing physically and spiritually the Holy Prophet ﷺ. When he was arrested and he was brought by the police, look at that picture and understand who is a prisoner and who is a captor. Who is the one who is brave and who is the one who is scared. Look to that picture carefully and you will see that he is leading, that he is the lion. And those ones who have come to arrest him, those shaitanic ones, they are like heedless goats, scared in the presence of a lion. He was like this because he was trained under Sultan al-Awliya. And he was taking the Sahaba Kiram for his examples too, because they were the bravest in standing up for the truth. On the day of Badr, Siddiqul Akbar, the peer of our tariqat, Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq, he was standing in front of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, shielding him with his sword, so much that Hazrat Ali said that Hazrat Abu Bakr was the bravest of all the Sahaba Kiram. This is a praise that the Lion of Allah, Hazrat Ali Karramallahu Wajhah, is giving to Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq. In the battle, the uncle of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, Hazrat Hamza, he was standing in front of the Holy Prophet shouting, I am the Lion of Allah. Hazrat Ali Karramallahu Wajhah slept in the bed of the Holy Prophet, knowing that the enemies were coming to assassinate him. These are our examples. These are our role models. These are the ones who are shining stars in front of us, guiding us and opening the way for us to take us out from the darkness of our ego and the darkness of this world. And that courage, it comes from fearing only Allah and not fearing other than Allah. It comes from loving only Allah and not loving other than Allah. And that did not end with the Sahaba-i-Kiram. It continued to their true followers, to the beloved ones of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, it continued to our Ottoman grandfathers. And that same bravery was shown in Çanakkale. Those Mehmetçiks, those soldiers of the Prophet, those last Turkish soldiers who formed the last defense of the Khalifa with their lives, while all of the Muslim world, they were coming to attack the Khilafat. From east to west, the entire Muslim world, majority we're speaking about, and especially the leadership of the Muslim world, who have turned their backs on the Khalifatullah, who have turned their backs on the Khalifa of the Rasul. And they were allying themselves with the enemies of Islam to bring down the Khilafat. And so many Muslims were fooled by their leaders, as they are still fooled by their leaders today. But those Mehmetçiks, they are the ones who stood up against the whole world. Those are the brave ones. And as our Shaykh is teaching us, in Çanakkale, there was one soldier whose hand, he was severely injured by a bullet. He gave a knife to his captain and said, "Please cut my hand off so that I may be able to fight more freely." And the captain cut that hand without any anesthesia, without anything. And that soldier ran to the front saying, "I must give up this life. Before I die sitting here, I must die in that way." And he entered into the enemy life, into the enemy's lines, and so many bullets came to him. And that soldier was taking his last breath, and someone asked if there was any bread to give to this soldier who was about to die. And that whole battalion, they did not have any bread for 1 week. And from the other side, one piece of bread appeared and came to the captain's hand. And the soldier, seeing this, smiled, and he said, "Oh, my captain, please save that piece of bread, because I'm already counting the minutes to go from this life. Save that bread for another one of my brothers, so that it may give energy to them to fight." Bravery, the courage, fearlessness. If we want to learn it, we learn it from them. And that bravery, that courage comes from being an obedient servant of Allah and fully submitting to Allah. Because when a man submits to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and becomes an Abdullah, he knows that nothing in the whole world can hurt him. He knows that everything is from his Lord. Just as Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was going into the fire, he said, "Hasbinallah wa ni'mal wakil." For the servants of Allah, Allah is enough for them. They have full faith and trust in Allah. And our Shaykh, Sahib al-Saif, he is the lion of Allah of this time. He had no fear before presidents. He had no fear in front of judges. He has no fear before the governments. He only feared Allah. As he said in the night that he was arrested in Turkey, "I'm living for Allah. I don't fear anyone. I only fear Allah. And I fear Allah out of my love of Allah. I'm living these days only for Allah." The fear of Allah comes from the love of Allah. Believers do not fear Allah because Allah may punish him. They do not fear Allah because they want paradise. They fear Allah because they love Allah. And they only want Allah to be pleased with them. That is love. That you do everything in your power only to please your beloved. And you do anything in your power to not cause any distress to your beloved. The flag of Islam, the flag of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, it has been folded and kept away. The holy office of the Khalifatullah, it has been veiled. There is no permission in these days to fight. There is no permission in these days to fight in the name of Allah, the physical fight. The lesser struggle, the physical struggle, that way is closed. But the way of the greatest struggle, it is open. That is a struggle, the jihad against your nafs. And those who are preparing every day this struggle, they are preparing for the appearances of Sahibul Zaman, Hazrat Mahdi alayhi salam. Those who are not struggling against their ego now, maybe will not be ready for the appearances of Sahibul Zaman, Hazrat Mahdi alayhi salam. Those who are not struggling against their ego, they will definitely find the Dajjal to be easier to follow. O believers, live for Allah. Have fear only from Allah. Let that bravery and courage to awaken in our hearts. When Allah is with us, nothing can stand in our way. And we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to count us from those who are going to be counted as the courageous believers of this Akhir Zaman, so that we may be raised under the flag of those brave ones who came before us. Amin. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, lazim, alazi, la ilaha illa wal hayyul qayyum wa atubu ilayhi tabatin. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, lahul mulku wa alhamdulillahi ala kulli shay'in qadir.